I'd like to begin by just saying I am honored to be here to present to you guys about integrity and how this affects the job search. This is a topic that is incredibly important today in business and in life, and it's gotten quite a bit of publicity, largely negative, in the past several years with scandals and fraud that have been made public. So I think this incredibly important opportunity gives us each a chance to take a look at ourselves and to do a little self-evaluating and to determine factors around our own integrity. Let's begin by talking about what integrity is. According to dictionary.com, integrity is the adherence to moral and ethical principles, soundness of moral character, and honesty. I have an aunt that has said several times that integrity is doing the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do. I was several years younger when I heard that the first time, and it sounded so profound, simple yet very profound. Something similar that I've come across is a quote from Oprah Winfrey. Real integrity is doing the right thing, knowing that nobody's going to know whether you did it or not. Very similar to what my aunt said. And then a quote that I came across this past week is, wisdom is knowing the right path to take. Integrity is taking it. The difficult part is not often what path is the correct path, but it's having the courage to have integrity and to take the path of least resistance. It can be uncomfortable. It's often unpopular. But integrity is making the right choice even when nobody's watching. On this next slide, you see a picture of our 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, possibly known as one of the most honorable men that has ever served our country. Do you guys know what his nickname was? Honest Abe. We all know, we've heard about Honest Abe. It has been many, many years since he was alive, and many before that since he was president, but his legacy goes on, and he's known for his honesty. His reputation for honesty began when he was an adolescent, and he was working at a convenience store as a clerk. And while he was there, he noticed at the end of a day of business that he had not given a lady the correct amount of change. And so what he did was walk a few miles to this lady's home to give her back that change. That's where his reputation began, and later he became an attorney, and he had a practice, and there were similar stories to that effect, where he had a client that paid him more than he thought the client should have, and so he gave some of that money back. Of course, later on, he became president. He's had many quotes that people remember and that are on numerous websites, but these are two of my favorites. First one, if once you forfeit the confidence of your fellow citizens, you can never regain their respect and esteem. This is the importance and how fragile integrity is and how fragile our reputations are. And possibly my favorite of his quotes, how many legs does a dog have if you call the tail a leg? 4. Calling a tail a leg does not make it a leg. And this, to me, relates a lot in the job search, and I'll talk about this in future slides. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to a conference called Tomorrow's Leaders of Northwest Arkansas. And at this conference, I heard many great speakers, but there was a keynote speaker named David Horsager, who is the author of The Trust Edge. It's a current national best-selling book, and I recommend it highly to anybody. But there are some quotes in here that I'd like to reference. He said that trust has always been fundamental to genuine success of any time. He believes that we are in a trust crisis. Trust has become the world's most precious resource. Almost overnight, trust found its way into the public limelight specifically because it has been so hard to find. From massive fraud in business to scandals in politics and athletics, the headlines point to a persistent problem of modern life and business. We are lacking in trust. Interestingly, a lot of these scandals that we hear about have to do with financial greed. Well, David Horsager has done a lot of research to do with trust, and that's what's in his book. As trust increases, so does the bottom line. When trust increases, output, morale, retention, productivity, innovation, and revenue all increase. As trust increases, costs, stress, skepticism, the negative components, those decrease. So why do we talk about trust? Why do we dedicate a few days to trust and integrity? As college students, many of you are learning about yourself as you're in college. You're learning about your values, your beliefs, what you care about, and who you are away from your parents. What our values are and what we care about determine our decisions, and what decisions we make determine our integrity and our reputation. See this picture here? It's of a sequoia tree from Yosemite National Park. These take up to 3,000 years to grow this large. They're huge. You can see the man beside this sequoia tree and how small he looks in comparison to it. The oldest sequoia tree that's been recorded was a little over 3,200 years old. Slowly it grows, slowly it gets to this size. Same goes with trust. And one careless act can cause a forest fire that can destroy a sequoia tree in one day. Our reputations are built by the choices that we make every single day. Whether good choices or bad choices, it all comes back to our choices. And also that our decisions don't only impact us. Our decisions always impact other people. My personal decisions impact my family, my children, my parents, my husband, my coworkers, my boss, my department, and of course, the University of Arkansas. The choices that we make impact so many other people. So how do we build trust? How do we build integrity and a reputation? And the key is, just like this sequoia tree, you make good decisions all along the way. Consistently make good choices. I grew up listening to country music. My dad always had it playing in his truck. My mom always had it playing in the minivan. Country music is something that goes back a long way with me. And there are many situations where a country song is brought to mind by a circumstance going on or by a certain topic. I think of music, it speaks to me. Well, Aaron Tippin, back in 1991, released a song called You've Got to Stand for Something. And the lyrics go, "Now, Daddy didn't like trouble, but if it came along, everyone that knew him knew which side that he'd be on. He never was a hero or this county's shining light, but you could always find him standing up for what he thought was right. He'd say, you've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. You've got to be your own man and not a puppet on a string. Never compromise what's right and uphold your family name. You've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. Now, we might have been better off or owned a bigger house if Daddy had done more giving in or a little more backing down. But we always had plenty, just living his advice. Whatever you do today, you'll have to sleep with tonight. Now, I know that things are different than they were in Daddy's days, but I still believe what makes a man really hasn't changed. You've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything." I love this song. This has come to mind so many times through the years. And it speaks strongly to me of the importance of integrity and how important it is to know what we value and what we stand for and to make decisions based on that every day. So let's talk about how this relates to the job search. How does integrity relate to the job search? CEO of a New York-based recruitment firm earlier this year estimated that 40% of resumes that she comes across are dishonest in some way or another. The Society for Human Resource Management reported that they have increased the amount of time they spend checking references by 40%. Why do they do this? It's because trust is harder to find these days. It is the most precious resource. So let's talk about, in the job search, there are applications, there are resumes, there are interviews. The purpose of a resume is simple. The purpose of a resume is to get a phone call. It's to get the employer, the hiring manager, to take a second look at you and want to interview you to be a candidate. It is quite simply a marketing tool. Resumes are often lied on, as we've talked about in the statistics before. Some lies have been made very public, some lies not so much. But some common resume lies would be playing with the dates of employment. This is a very common one, especially with the economy and unemployment being what it has been. It is not uncommon for people to falsify the information of the dates they were employed at different places. This can be done because of job hopping that a person is wanting to cover up, possibly having been fired from a position, and obviously not wanting that to come out. Simply being unemployed, possibly being incarcerated. There are a variety of reasons that people might lie about the dates. It is, of course, a terrible idea, but it does happen quite a bit. More commonly than that, I believe, or at least more publicly than that, are claiming bogus college degrees on a resume. Back in 2012, the CEO of Yahoo was terminated for claiming that he had a computer science degree on his resume, and it turned out that he did not have one. He got the job, he had been in the job, but some of his decisions were being questioned, and because of that, there was an investigation done into his records and employment, and it came out, and of course he was terminated. He is not alone in that. There are many, many people, college football coaches, other CEOs, executives. Another common resume lie is embellishment. Possibly a person saying that they increased sales by 80%, when in fact they may have increased sales by 8%. Or a person claiming that they've managed 50 people at their past position when maybe they managed 5 to 10 people. A common lie for graduates and students is also to increase your GPA on your resume or to claim that you were part of an honor society. There are many ways. It's a short document, but there are many ways to falsify information. And it is a bad idea every time. It's important to market yourself on your resume. And your resume does not have to be a detailed account of every month of your life. But it is important to be sure and not put false information on there. Another hot topic. What happens in Vegas stays on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Social media is a big topic today when it comes to the job search. I talk to students every week about social media with questions that they might have or possibly in a classroom presentation. Some interesting statistics that I came across. If Facebook were a country, it would be the third largest country in the world. Social media has become the #1 activity on the web. This is no surprise. 1 in 5 divorces are blamed on Facebook. The Ford Explorer launch back last year the Ford Explorer launch on Facebook last year generated more traffic than a Super Bowl ad. Every minute, 72 hours of videos are uploaded to YouTube. And of course, social media, it affects our relationships, both online and offline. It has a big impact on our life. And whether we like social media or not, it is a part of our world, and it is a part of the job search. I came across an article yesterday that had the quote, "Anything you say on social media can and will be used against you in the court of public opinion." And that is very true. There's been controversy on whether or not it's an invasion of privacy, if it's ethical, and arguments along that line. And maybe it is or maybe it isn't, but employers are looking on our social media sites. One of the counselors in our office did a presentation and used the analogy of a blind date, and I loved that analogy. If you were to go on a blind date with somebody, you were to be set up on a blind date, it was a week or two out, and all you knew about the person was their name. There's a good chance, if you're anything like me, I would probably be Googling the person's name. I would be looking on social media sites. I would want to see the way they portrayed themselves, not the way they portray themselves in a 30-minute dinner or an hour-long interview as far as job candidates go. But it's a dating relationship as well, and so the employers want to know what type of person they are getting. I've also heard students say that that is their private information, and I can understand that, but the second that it goes online, it's no longer private information. So that's definitely something to be careful of. It was released back in February of this year, a study that 40% of employers reported that they use social media as a way to screen applicants. It takes 5 seconds to make a first impression, whether that's in person, whether that's online, 5 seconds. And in person, when I talk about that, I talk about how that has to do with our personal image, what we wear, the way we conduct ourselves. When it's online, it has to do with your social media pages. In 5 seconds, you make a first impression. Of these 40% that screen their applicants by social media sites, 65% said that they're looking for professionalism and social conduct, 51% company culture fit, and 45% to learn more about those qualifications. Of those 40%, 43% decided not to hire somebody based on something that they found on their social media sites. 50% for inappropriate content. This is no surprise. 48% for alcohol and drug use and pictures surrounding all of that. 33% for bad-mouthing employers. This has been a misconception. These are not private sites. What you post online can get out. I personally know people that have been terminated because of what they have posted about their employers before on Facebook, current employers. 30% for poor communication skills. 28% for discriminatory comments, and 24% lied about their qualifications. So they're looking for congruency between what you submit to the employer and what's on your online profile. But it's not just a negative thing here for social media. Of those 40% that reported that they do screen candidates by social media sites, 20% of them said that they found reasons to hire people based on their social media sites. So it's not simply to weed out candidates. What these 20% found, 57% said it was for the professional image that the person portrayed. 50% for good personality, a wide interest range, consistency of information between their LinkedIn profile, between their Facebook, and their resume. Creativity. Social media is a great place to display your own creativity, and that includes blogging. Communication skills, and 38% positive references from others. LinkedIn has a feature where you can ask to be recommended and where you can recommend other people. This isn't just simply endorsed for certain skills, but have a written recommendation. This can go a long way in your job search. So if you've ever Googled yourself, or if you haven't Googled yourself, I should say, I recommend Googling yourself. Employers will be doing that. So Google yourself and see what comes up. You might be very pleasantly surprised. You might be unpleasantly surprised. But what I call the negative things that come up is digital dirt. How do you handle digital dirt if it is already on there? That's a big question that is asked. First thing I would suggest is to clean up what you can. Some of those might be on your personal social media sites. Some of those may not be on your personal social media sites. But the ones that you have control over, I would recommend cleaning up what you can. If there's something that's on a friend's site, I would ask that friend to clean that up. Secondly, I would start adding positives. Starting today, I would add positives. Would get active on LinkedIn. You can comment in different group discussions, and you can start portraying a more professional self. And then be ready to answer questions. If negative things do come up on your Google search, then there's a good chance that those will be asked about in a job interview. And if they do come up, it's important to be prepared for those and to have answers to those questions. And most importantly on this would be to take ownership of anything that is negative that is found. I think it's important to say not to make excuses. Simply, you messed up, you regretted it, you learned a lesson, and it won't happen again, sort of thing. All right, so how to handle some other tough situations. DUIs. 1 in 3 American adults have been arrested by the age of 23, and a lot of these have to do with drugs or DUIs. There is a website called arkansasonline.com, and on that there's a section called Right to Know. Right, the number 2, know. And under that, anybody who has been arrested in the state of Arkansas will show up with their mugshot, their name, their charge, and the date of their charge. Anybody can be put on this. This is reported by a sheriff's office. So this would be a very bad first impression, obviously, for an employer. If they Google your name and you pop up with a mugshot, that is a bad, bad thing. Although there are 1/3 of Americans that I said that have been arrested by the age of 23. So of course we don't want that to be our first impression. But what if it is? What do we do from that point on? And this includes misdemeanors as well. For those with DUIs, driving positions, at least for 3 years, would be out of the question. Typically, a driving check goes back 3 years. This hinders sales jobs, recruiting jobs. There are many jobs that this affects. Anything to do with travel. An isolated incident is probably not going to be a career-ending move, but multiple offenses can make a huge impact. An isolated incident will have negative repercussions, but multiple offenses is where it gets really tough. Again, just like handling digital dirt, it's important to be honest. It's important to take ownership. If you messed up, admit that you messed up. Take ownership for that. Another interesting topic is credit. Bad credit. How can this impact your job search? And in all but 7 states, employers can request your credit report. Arkansas is not one of those 7 states, so there's a good chance at some point you'll be asked permission to give your credit report. For finance jobs, this would probably weed a candidate out. For other jobs, it may not make that much of a difference, but in cases where right now the economy is not at the greatest job market, so it's a competitive market to get a job. And if there's a tiebreaker, there are times when a credit score might make the difference on a tiebreaker, bad credit versus good credit. And what employers are really looking for, they're looking for longevity. They're making a big investment when they hire somebody. Training costs a lot of money. Retraining costs a lot of money. So what employers really want to know is if you're in it for the long haul, or at least for a few years. And so a credit score or credit report that shows some instability can certainly be a red flag to an employer. Nobody's perfect. We've talked a lot about integrity and making good choices, but we know that nobody's perfect. We've all made many mistakes. We're all going to make many more mistakes. What I want to encourage you to think about is, what are your values? What do you believe in? And what kind of a legacy do you want to leave behind? Even if nobody's watching, I want to encourage you to do the right thing anyway. Do you have any questions for me?
On the one side, it said poor communication through Facebook and everything. Is that more like text messaging talk, or just poor grammar, or?
It didn't specify.
Just curious.
But that is a good question. I would be curious to know. Any other questions?
Is it a good thing to get on like LinkedIn or something before you get a job, like before you start the job market? Or is it okay if you don't have that? Or do you feel like it's a benefit? I don't know much about LinkedIn, so but I've just heard that with like jobs and stuff.
I believe it's a huge benefit. It is a chance to portray your professional side, even if you don't have much professional experience up to that point. It's a place that you can show recommendations, and again, your communication skills are shown through LinkedIn. And that's a new service actually that we'll be working with students on, is offering LinkedIn profile reviews.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And also one thing to note on that is the pictures on LinkedIn, they need to be a professional shot, looking at the camera and shoulders up, kind of the rules behind the LinkedIn picture. And you could ask for recommendations on there from a professor, from somebody that you play sports with or in a sorority with, your peers. Asking for recommendations is great.
What other questions?
So do you have any tips for students that if they find themselves having been arrested or cited or something along those ways, as far as the best way to approach a potential employer and at what point to maybe self-disclose that as opposed to waiting for them to find that out on their own?
Yes, that is a great point, and it is important to self-disclose that. Typically on a job application, there will be some part that says, have you ever been convicted of? Some of them just say a felony, but some will say misdemeanors as well. It is much better to be upfront and honest, and I believe that's a much more respected approach by an employer.
So do you have any tips for the best way to have that conversation with the potential employer regarding the past indiscretions that may have happened?
I would bring that up, possibly in the interview, but most certainly if you have been given an offer before a background check is run. And I would approach that in a very confident and upfront, honest way. Say, for example, it's a DUI. You know, this DUI was from several years back. It was after a party. I made a mistake. It was a bad decision, and it's not going to happen again. But I want you to be aware of that, because if you do run a background check, it's going to show up.
I had that actually happen to me in an interview with a candidate, and she disclosed it during the actual offer. When I was making the offer, she decided I need to let you know, and it would have come up because she had a position where she had to go through a background check, and I was telling her before this offer could be, I could really finalize the offer, you have to make sure you're passing this background check and all of that. So I was very happy that she disclosed it. However, it had been many years ago, and she had other successful positions since then. So I really felt good about it and went ahead and offered her the position.
Good questions. Any others? All right. Well, thank you.